Okay, so this is part two of the physics of fascia, and this is meant to set you up for the maintenance treatment class, which is the full body treatment that we do at MSK. We're going to share that treatment and bring you into more advanced, more specific work from there. So we start broad with the maintenance treatment, and then we get more and more and more and more specific. But it's very good to have a broad treatment that kind of gets everything. So as we move into more specific work, you don't have all the background noise of the big stuff in the way. And so we start with the maintenance treatment. And so here we go with the part two of the physics of fascia. Now we're going to talk about the fascial properties, electricity, and water, and then what we can do about it as manual therapists. My job is to bring all of this physics into the clinic. And so I'm never going to tell you something that's not applicable directly to clinic. And we have a solution of how we can use manual therapy and physics and combine those two to get the best results. And so we're looking at maybe a different kind of treatment though. Okay, so fascial properties. We're going to run through what's a colloid, what's elastin, collagen, elasticity, plasticity, ground substance, that's the water within the fascia, and what we can do about all of these things. And so let's start with ground substance. Okay, so let's talk about ground substance. And ground substance is a colloid. And so colloid properties is it conforms to the shape of a container, which is the properties of a solution, and it offers more resistant to higher velocities of force. This is called thixotrophy. And so it can actually change its behavior based on forces that are put on it. And so if you look at your ground substance, this is the material within your fascia. This is the fluid, okay? And we're going to go too much in that, but it's a gel-like substance in the extracellular space of the fascia. And so extracellular, it's on the outside of the cells. And so, hey, if we could affect the outside of the cells, maybe we could create more glide through the body, right? And we absolutely can. And so properties of a colloid, ketchup's a colloid, and everybody knows if you have ketchup in a glass bottle, the only way to get it out of there is to hit the bottle. So you have to whack it, as some kind of vibration to it. And what are you doing really? You're adding velocity to your ketchup, and it goes from this thick solution to a more runny solution that it shoots out. And technically, solution is not the right word. It's a colloid. Okay, so thixotrophy is the ability for it to offer more resistance to a higher velocity of forces. So as I add force, it can change its texture. It's going to get harder or softer, right? And so we can affect our ground substance like we can affect the runniness of ketchup. Okay, the colloid is the property of becoming less viscous when subjected to an applied stress at low velocity. Okay, and so if you alter the velocity, the amount of speed, remember the vibration? If you change the vibrational pattern that's going to go into this colloid liquid, you can make it more runny or less runny, right? And so we can alter how the ground substance, the liquid within the fascia, it behaves based on how we put in our forces, right? And that's the law of vibration, right? It's okay. So this is thixotrophy. And now you could do this at home, and I highly, highly recommend that you do this experiment. And if you got kids at home, do it with them because it's pretty fun. You take some cornstarch and water, you mix it up. Just go get a box of regular old cornstarch, get the cheap stuff, and you put about 1/4 of that box of cornstarch into a mixing bowl, and then you slowly stir in a 1/2 cup of water. And you're going to feel it get liquidy and then get tough. And then once that mixture is made, you can try to hit it hard, or you can go in real gentle, and you could add more water, add more cornstarch, and play with that, because the way that thix is going to behave differently. And you've made a thixotrophic colloid within this bowl, and you can play with that by, like, if you hit it, it'll get really hard, or if you add more and more water, you'll change the way that it behaves, and you can start thinking about the different levels of that colloid that lays throughout your body and how forces applied to it are different. You must do this experiment. It is really worth doing to understand how you're affecting the body. And so you just put this in a big mixing bowl. It's pretty messy, but it's pretty fun. And so these are accidents, this guy falling off a ladder. And so these are thixotrophy accidents, catching a ball. And so what happens when I catch a ball? When the ball comes into my hand and there's an impact, it's thixotropic. So as soon as that impact happens, it gets hard. And it's going to get hard just like that cornstarch does, right? And so if I hit my hand to catch the ball, what's really happening is the speed of my fingers to closing that ball is not fast enough. Like I can't physically close it fast enough. That's why catching, like, remember when you're a kid catching a wiffle ball, like the really lightweight ball just bounces off your hand? Because it doesn't have the mass to create this thixotropic reaction. So, but a baseball certainly does. And so it hits, and what happens is you're not closing your hand just perfectly in time. What's happening is the ground substance, the liquid within your hand gets hard. So on the point of impact, your hand literally gets hard and closes around the ball. This is a physics issue. It's a mechanical issue. Your brain has nothing to do with you catching this ball, right? Because the liquid gets hard and then it softens. And so that's happening all the time. This guy falling off the ladder, this result can be this, right? A broken bone. And so you can break this bone because what happens with the bones are designed to bend. Now, if I can put a certain amount of force into a bone slowly, then that bone will just bend over time. Now, if I do that quickly, what's going to happen is this thixotropic reaction. The bone's going to get very hard and stiff very quick. And so if something is stiffer, it's more likely to break. And so the speed of the impact makes a big difference on whether or not you break a bone. Now, we've seen kids in our clinic who are sprinting across a football field and hit a post, and the post didn't move, and he completely shattered his femur. And you're like, how can this kid shatter his femur just, running into a post? It's the speed of which he was traveling. We have another kid who he was a little kid and he was playing with big kids, and the big kids kicked the soccer ball, and they're showing off, and they kicked it hard, and he jumped up to block the soccer ball and he broke his arm. And it's like, wow, is that kid malnourished, or what's going on with this kid? All he did was block a soccer ball. Well, he's younger than these bigger kids, and the speed of the ball created a thixotropic reaction. So his arm got really hard, really fast. And at that moment, it broke. And so if you put the same force into his arm slowly over time, that bone will just bend. He'll be just fine. It's the speed of which the force went in. And that really is vibration. And so we are using vibration to affect the body, but we can do it in a positive way. If you understand how this works, you go, okay, so how can I affect the body using these natural laws and understanding this thixotropic reaction? Okay. And so elasticity, I'm not going to kill these. We're going to go pretty quick through these. Elasticity is the ability for an object to change its shape and return to its original position. So that's what we want in our fascia. We want to be able to change the shape and have the fascia be elastic and return to its original position. When I raise my arm over my head and I come back like this, I want all my veins, nerves, arteries, fascia, all of this system to be elastic, to be able to stretch with my arm and remove and return to the original position when I put my arm down. That's very important. If you're neurologically guarded, that doesn't happen. And so that is a huge fundamental to understand, to find what's wrong with your patients. We can suss out exactly what's wrong with them because they've lost elasticity. Now, plasticity is the ability for it to be deformed. If I push on my arm, I want that to be deformed. Your bones, there's a level of plasticity. You want them to be able to be deformed. Like when that kid caught the soccer ball, he lost his plasticity because the speed of the ball in that it lost its plasticity. It couldn't bend. It met its ductile limit and it's not malleable. And so it snapped. Okay, so plasticity is its ability to be deformed, and elasticity is the ability for it to be deformed and return. Okay, and then you've got viscosity, and viscosity is just the thickness of the fluid. The lower viscosity is the more runny it is. The higher viscosity, the thicker it is. So over high viscosity, think about honey, right? Low viscosity, water. And so what is honey? So honey is a colloid. In honey, if you add heat to honey, it becomes runny. And so what happens, you got thick honey in a spoon and you drop it into your tea and it's still thick. And as you stir it and you start moving it around, the honey just completely disappears. It became less and less viscous based on the heat. And so our bodies operate at 98.6 degrees, supposedly, if your thyroid's working. But everybody knows we took thousands of patients' temperature during COVID, and everybody's running at 97. So what's up with that? That's a question that we should be thinking about. Okay, so here's the properties of fascia. Viscoelasticity and viscoplasticity. What's the visco part? That's the fluid. Okay, and so we can have huge effects on the fluid. And so if it's viscoelastic, the fluids is going to allow for movement and returning. If it's viscoplastic, it's going to allow for movement, right? And so really we want both of these working together, because if it's not plastic, it's not going to be elastic because it can't make that original motion, right? Okay, so muscle tears, they've reached their ductile and malleable limits. So the tissue can no longer, it's not viscoplastic or viscoelastic, and it depends on the speed. I hope you understand this. Do the cornstarch experiment. Don't cheat yourself. Do the experiment and play with it. Even if you've done it before, do it again. Do it again. Okay, and so the speed of which the activity is, you get a thixotrophic reaction and muscles are more likely to tear, right? Hamstring tears are the biggest one you hear. The proximal hamstring up at the ischial tuberosity up near your butt, the hamstring will pop audibly. That never happens in slow motion. Those are sprinting injuries or jumping injuries. I was moving really fast and I heard a pop, right? It's the speed of which the activity happened that caused the tear, which you can rehab these. We can rehab these. It's maybe 6 weeks with just manual therapy, but I recommend some other therapies along with the manual therapy with torn muscles. Okay, and here's something to remember. Okay, fascia grows last. Okay, so you're gonna rehab a patient that maybe they just got their PhD and they've been sitting around all day and they want to start exercising, and they're coming to you for like, okay, how do I get strong and get my body back? So I worked my mind for the last 20 years. I've been just sitting around reading books. I need to work my body and I want to become an athlete. I want to do some CrossFit or something, right? And so the order of operations for your body to come back online. So this guy's going to start working out. He's going to get really strong, really fast in the first 1 to 2 weeks. They're going to have huge gains. Those gains are the nervous system's dialing in the signals. That is your nervous system just working better. So he's getting stronger. That's just nervous system, right? And then hypertrophy happens. So muscles start bulking, right? The cells start bulking up. Your body's like, oh, I need to get stronger. And then fascia will adapt later. Fascia takes 6 months to fully adapt to the demands. It takes 6 months to become plastic and elastic and to gain its strength. Now, the collagen that makes your fascia is stronger than steel, millimeter by millimeter squared. It's very strong, but you have to give it time to reach that adaptation. And so this guy is going to get an injury if he goes too fast at the tendon junctions. He's going to have tendon injuries, right? He's not going to have muscle injuries or big tears. It's going to be always at the connections. That's where the fascia thickens and it requires bounce. And so that elasticity, that bounce, you say, if you take a long distance runner who's been running for years, they're not running with muscles as much, nearly as much as they're just bouncing on the elasticity of their fascia. They're just bouncing along, right? That's the fascia that's doing that. And so you're going to do the best justice to your clients by understanding this is a 6-month process. And I've had these guys show up and their homework was before you even start your CrossFit or whatever you're going to do, you are going to jump rope for 1 minute for 1 week. And then you're going to jump rope for 2 minutes the next week. And you're going to do this for 6 weeks. And you're going to get to jumping rope for 6 minutes for 6 weeks. And then you're going to go to the gym. And then you're going to ramp up slowly from there. But even that 6 weeks ramping, that bouncing to get the elasticity back into the fascia, it makes a huge difference. And jumping is one of the best fascia exercises you can do. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to do this 1 minute for 1 week. And it's going to take some patience, right? And so you're going to have to explain this to them, right? And so you can do other stuff, but don't start lifting heavy. Don't really throw on the weights. And then until you've done this 6 weeks of jumping, and then it's going to be 6 months before you start going for personal bests, right? You're not going to do your marathon. We have people, I want to run a marathon in 6 weeks. Like, you are definitely going to get like a stress fracture in your foot. And there's actually a marathon that happens down the street. And every year we get all the foot stress fractures that come in. And it is lack of training. And it's usually women who were pregnant. And they were athletes before they got pregnant. They raised their kids. They're out and they want to go back into it. Their mind remembers exactly their athletic ability from before. They train too fast for it. It's a marathon that's on pavement and they get a stress fracture in their foot, right? Because remember the fascia, your periosteum is fascia, right? And I believe bones are fascia. They're just crystallized fascia, right? It makes sense because that's the fractalness of your body. Okay, so that's the law of correspondence. So, okay, and so the nervous system affects the quality and plasticity of the fascia more than anything else. Why? Because a contraction is controlled by the brain. Muscles contract, so does fascia. We know fascia has smooth-like muscles cells that can contract, right? And so your fascia contracts. It takes 3 days to contract. It's not a strong contraction, it's a slow squeeze. And your body is going to make that happen if it feels like it needs that for stability, right? And your brain controls that. Your brain controls that. And so all of our ligament work is using that principle, okay? And I've said this before, and this is the key that my mentor, Mark Bookout, just couldn't really get over to most people, that all tight muscles are guarding something. There is no exception. If you just got to stop and think about it and reverse engineer, like, why are your hamstrings so tight? Well, maybe your low back is going to be injured if they're not, right? So your body's always looking for safety, security, and stability. If it doesn't have safety, security, and stability, muscles are going to be tight. Now, not only muscles get tight because fascia has contractile tissue. Well, guess what's encapsulating your nerves, veins, and arteries and all your organs? Fascia. And so if there's a guarding required to protect, if it feels like there's trouble, your veins, nerves, and artery are going to be tight. And so if they're tight, you're not going to have plasticity, you're not going to have elasticity. And if I've got chemotherapy done in this arm, I am not going to be able to raise my arm over my head. And it is the brain that's controlling that. This is really important because if you can attack it from the brain down, like we've had our chemotherapy patients, they can raise their arm up after this treatment, right? One treatment. And that's the nervous system treatment. That's the neural reset, going to the MSK neural reset. Okay, and I was reading in a book by Casper Blond, The Liver, and he published it in 1920. And so we've known at least minimum in 1920, if you consume a toxin, if you eat something toxic, and that toxin winds up into your blood vessels, the blood vessels will guard. And so we've known that this guarding happens since 1920s. And so it's time to put that into practice. And that's what we're doing. We're going to get it out there. Because if you know something's guarded, you can, if you know something's guarded because it is missing, it doesn't feel safe, secure, and stable, then you could very precisely test out exactly where in the body that problem is. And we have techniques that can release that. And it's, you got to do it really from the brain down. You got to have the brain involved. And so if you don't have the neural reset yet, stick with it and let's get that. Let's get that into your clinic. Let's get that on your table. But what you can do in the meantime is move. And so always add movement to your technique. So this is the patient moving. So add patient movement to your techniques. If you can add patient movement, the brain's involved, right? And so you must have movement on the table, voluntary movement, right? Okay, so if you look at this, this is from our liver class. I'm going to do a pretty big talk on the liver and break it all down. And when I'm talking about the liver, it's kind of the centerpiece of your organs. And we're talking about the liver, the kidneys, the spleen, all of it. And all the same technique works for everything. So we don't need to overcomplicate this stuff. And that's the goal, is like, if you're doing something and it's way complicated, it's probably wrong. It can be really simplified. And the more simple the techniques are, the better they work. So here's the portal vein coming up. And now can I draw on this? I'm going to draw on this here. So here's the portal vein coming up. Now say I ate something that disagrees with me and it's in my venous system. This vein is going to get hard. Now, if that vein is hard on down to your legs, and we see this all the time, all the time. Now that vein's hard and it's guarding. Where does this vein go? It goes up all the way through the liver. And so you will find that the liver itself gets hard. And the best way to release an organ is through the vascularization, because I can pull the portal vein this way. And if I can pull the portal vein this way and I can pull the liver that way, I could put elongation through the entire organ, through the whole thing. Under the rib cage, it doesn't matter. We can get to the heart this way. We can work on the heart using these principles. Now, releasing this is going to involve patient motion, the neural reset, and creating elongation, elasticity, and plasticity into the portal system, right? And if I can get that going, the liver is going to let go. Now, what is the liver going to do if the liver is in danger? It's going to tell the brain, I need guarding. So what's going to happen? Your ribs are going to close down and your ribs are going to get tight. Tight rib cages are telltale signs that the organ below is guarding. If the organ below is guarding, that's a telltale sign that there's a problem with the nerve, veins, and arteries of that system, right? And so these are people who have really tight rib cages, right? The best way to loosen a rib cage is work the vascular system, the neural system, and the organ below. That is the best and quickest way to get to that. And that is also the best way to improve somebody's posture, right? Now, I'm not doing postural rehabs from the superficial fascia in, like I'm doing postural rehabs from the heart, liver out. If I'm stuck in forward head posture, if I'm stuck here in forward head posture, it's probably a vessel, a nerve, vein, or artery down to my heart that is actually stopping that motion. It's not the superficial fascia. Once you get that heart opened up, that vascular nervous system opened up, the head comes back. The head comes back because the brain is like, okay, I've got safety, security, and stability. I can let go. Now I've got full range of my neck and I don't have forward head posture anymore. This is the quickest way to rehab posture, is to go from the inside out, not the outside in. That's my clinical experience, right? And it just works that way. It seems like it works that way. It does in our clinic. Okay. and I'm not trying to talk bad about other people are doing out there, but I really do think we need to add more stuff. We need to add more things to the practice because there's the 7 systems. And I think we've dialed that in. Okay, so viscoplasticity applied to treatments. So this is the thing that we used to do in school. You remember stretching, that we all just kind of faked it because it hurt. And so this is creep. And so creep is the first reaction to a load. And so you load the system. So like this guy's doing a hamstring stretch, and you just stay there. You just stay there for 45 to 60 seconds to have elongation happen. Now there's been studies done where 90 seconds creep no longer occurs. There is no point in staying more than 90 seconds because you've done all the elongation that's you're going to get that day, right? And so 90 seconds the max. So somewhere between 60 and 90 is good. And this is just for holding. We never do this in the clinic. We use muscle energy technique, and we use motion, and we use an active, so you contract the muscle while you stretch. And so you can contract a muscle and stretch it at the same time. Is extremely effective. And so we use all these tricks. We rarely ever do static stretching. So this works for fascia, but only after the muscles have let go. And so this is why it hurts and it takes so long. And so that's creep. We rarely do that in clinic. And I think people are getting away from this. I took our wrestling team and I gave them a, a stretch routine where one person was stretching the other, and we just use muscle energy technique, and we use an active an active muscle release technique where they're activating like the hamstring, like so this guy would be pushing this hamstring into the floor while he's doing this, and he's going to get a way better result. So if you could activate the muscle, and they stretched each other out, and we found that in pairs the stretch routine took the same amount of time. These kids got incredibly flexible because they were working as a team, and you're stretching your partner, and so there's no cheating, and they had significantly less injuries. The guys who participated in this was our just some of our wrestlers, high school kids. Okay, so thixotrophy applied to treatments. There's a thing called hysteresis. This is a process of energy loss due to friction and minute structural damage occurring during loading and unloading of tissue. So what the heck does that mean? Okay, this is what we're going to do for the whole body during our full body treatment. And so hysteresis is, I'm going to go here, say I'm going to massage, I'm doing this. I'm not adding any vibration, no velocity whatsoever. What I'm doing here, I believe a spa massage, and why it feels so good, is you're really giving a deep lymphatic treatment. Now, if you do deep tissue massage, that's different. You're like forcing things open. But if it's just a soft spa massage, it's mostly lymphatic work you're doing. Now with hysteresis, what I'm doing is you find the tight spot, and I'm going to give it a velocity and a rhythm. And I'm going to come in, and I'm in the working layer. Okay. And so let me describe the working layer. Okay, so we're going to describe the working layer. So you've got, okay, so this is the working layer. So you've got, this is the working layer. So you've got your skin, right? And there's a depth, and say this is the muscle knot or the trigger point that you're trying to get to. You are pushing down on this. Now, there's going to be a point where you're pushing down on the skin and you're going to get this kind of flexion where the body starts pushing back. It's like, no, I don't think so. And it starts pushing back. And then so at this point here, the body resists your force. And so that layer, this layer here, is the working layer, right? But I want to get to this thing here. I want to get to that. And so what you're going to have to do is you're going to work in the working layer. You're going to sit here and use your hysteresis vibration on that layer. And then eventually what's going to happen is the body's going to start relaxing and letting you in. And remember that Hilton's law says that the nerves that innervate this thing down here also innervate above. So you're already working on this. You're already working here. And so what I'm trying to do here now is as I take my time and I stay in the working layer, I don't jam in. And so the body does not ever have to push back. I stay right on the layer. This layer will go from here. It'll get deeper and deeper and deeper. And eventually the body's going to let you in where the working layer is here. And now I'm in on the knot that I'm trying to work on. So I'm able to go right through that knot, right? And so just take your time and use the law of vibration where I'm coming in and I'm just going to do that. You find something tight. Everybody, massage therapist is tight right there. So you're going to come and you're going to find the working layer and just barely get that. And so don't push in. Wait. Do not allow the body to resist this, right? And it's not too light, not too hard. So what you can do is practice on a partner, and we'll probably do this in class, is you're going to push down until the point where they say pain, pain. And when they feel pain, that's their intent to withdraw. Pain is the intent to withdraw from what you're doing. You've gone too far. Okay, so you never go to their pain threshold, and then you just use this velocity. So the speed is important. This is not it. Is that vibration and rhythm? And no, it's not. You go like this, and you're going to find the working layer goes deeper and deeper and deeper very quickly. And then you can change the location. So I'm moving back and forth like this, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there. And then within a few seconds, the working layer is all the way to the bone. And you've released this musculature, right? That's using the working layer. Okay, so that's hysteresis applied to the treatments, okay? This is the main difference that between what we're trying to show you and doing a massage, right? There's no gliding, like very little gliding. If you're doing myofascial release, even that is very little glide. It's more like holding while they're moving, right? You've got to impart movement in this person to get this moving, to get the tissue to like go quicker, because remember the brain is actually in charge, right? Now, okay, we're going to talk about how do you get the ground substance to go from maybe like less viscous to more viscous, more slippery tissue, right? This is your gel dissolve. And maybe those definitions aren't quite right. But if you haven't had the massage board yet, memorize gel dissolve because that's going to be on your board. What we're trying to do is we're going to break up particles due to the piezoelectric effect and generate electrons within the water. That's going to create easy water, right? And I'm going to talk about that. So what is this piezoelectric effect? We're converting mechanical force to electrical energy. Now, this is an experiment that's done many times. You've got this barium crystal here. It's a crystal, basically. And so if you hit the crystal down, you're going to get an electron. And so I'm going to draw. So, if I've got a crystal, and that's a crystal, and I put a force into the crystal, what's going to happen is I'm going to get an electron pop off. If I pull the crystal, I pull it like this, I'm going to get an electron to pop off, right? They have different polarities of the voltage, but you're going to get an electron. And so if I pull it, just this basic quartz crystal, doesn't matter. If I pull the crystal, you get an electron. If I push it, you get an electron. It's very exact. So the amount of force you put into the crystal, you'll get an exact voltage coming out. So what does that mean for us? I wonder. So what does that mean for us? Well, it means, well, let's go into this. Okay, so now you've got piezoelectric sensors. These are the sensors in crash test dummies. And so there are crystals within the dummy. There's a crystal. There are crystals in this dummy's head that are reading impact. And so when I impact this with this coming into this guy's head, I can get an exact pounds of force that this impact was by the level of electricity that comes out of that crystal. And so if it's like, say, -6 millivolts, I can convert that directly to pounds force. And it's always accurate. It's always accurate, right? It's dead on. So with that said, what does that mean for us? And what does that mean for manual therapy? So when I heard that fascia was piezoelectric, I fell out of my chair. And so if you didn't fall out of your chair, you don't know what that means. So electron flows within the body, okay? And so if I can compress fascia, I'm going to get electron flowing. If I pull fascia, I will get electron flowing exactly the opposite. So what is within your fascia? Piezoelectric crystals. You've got magnesiums and calciums and phosphoruses and all these different minerals in there. And if I can do this to those crystals, I can generate electricity in that system. And the reason why this softens, the reason why this gets soft so fast is the presence of electrons, right? So there's two things going on, right? So the first thing is you've improved water. You've improved the quality of the water. Now, homework after this is watch this 15-minute TED Talk. You're going to watch Gerald Pollack's. So homework after this is to watch this 15-minute TED Talk right here, Gerald Pollack. So you just put Gerald Pollack TED and then watch his talks. And if you like what he's saying there, just keep going and listen to all of his stuff. I'm not going to go really into Gerald Pollack's work because Gerald Pollack covers his work quite well. This is the definitive book. If I can get that to show up, right? So fourth phase of water. And what we're going to do in the body is we are going to create the fourth phase of water using the piezoelectric effect. So what in the world does that mean? So I have got, step out of the way. Okay, so I'm going to create the fourth phase water. So what does that mean? So if you have a cell and the cell is kind of lumpy, when there's a lot of lumpy cells in your body, and that's really not what we're going for, right? And they're doing this, right? And there's some stray electrons here and there and there. What happens when you add voltage and you add electrons to the cell? What happens is, say if I add these electrons through my vibrations, through the piezoelectric effect, now I'm maximizing the electrons. What happens is the water goes into a fourth phase because negatives and negatives repel each other. And so what's going to happen is this guy and this guy are going to start pushing away from each other. This guy and this guy, they're going to push away from each other. pushing away. And what's going to happen is you're going to have these cells pushing apart from each other. You're literally opening the spaces by adding electricity. Now, what happens inside the cell by using the piezoelectric effect? Well, they are going to be pushing apart because we're adding electrons within the cell, right? There's more electrons in the cell. And then so instead of having this clumpy cell, you are now going to create, let me do that in a different color. Right? And so instead of having a clumpy looking cell, you are now going to create spherical cells because inside they have their full complement of pressure. And on the outside, they have pressure going from each other. So let's get rid of this guy. Okay, so now I've got all my cells, not this anymore, but round. And inside they have full complement of pressure so they can create their shape and make a really sound cell wall, because what gives the cell the shape is the water, right? That gives your brain its shape, it gives your muscles their shape, it gives your body its shape. The abdomen, its shape is based on the waters on the inside and that pressure. And what do you stabilize on? You stabilize on your water. Your inter-abdominal pressure that stabilizes your low back is stabilized on the water. Your diaphragm comes down, creates pressure. The water within your guts push against your spine. And so what you have here is everybody pushing against everybody else, and it's fully wide open, fully functioning. And if it's fully wide open, well, guess what's this water? This is your lymphatic system, and now it can flow. Now I've got flow, and I've got glide, and my nerve that's running through here, right? So my nerve that's running through here now has space to glide, and the brain is going to get a signal that that's now safe, secure, and stable. And so now I'm going to have elasticity and plasticity to this nerve, and everything starts opening up. All right. So that is the advantage of understanding easy water. Now just go into Pollock's work and get into that. So what I'm going to do later is we're going to do a whole lecture like this one on the electrical body, because not only can you create easy water and create glide and get the lymphatics out, and the lymphatics, that's your septic waste system. And so if the area around your cells and your nerves and your veins and arteries are not septic, well, your brain's going to say, well, now it's safe, and now I can return elasticity to the system. There goes your posture, your arm movements, and everything gets better. And your liver starts working, and your heart doesn't have to work so hard, and your stomach works, and your digestive system starts turning on, your spleen, your pancreas, all of this stuff. Every one of these organs needs to feel safe. If they don't feel safe, they're not going to function. So easy water is a good start. Now, if you look at, okay, so now I'm looking at electrical flow through the fascia, right? And so here's your acupuncture meridians, which is your electrical system, right? This is why, like, the Tom Myers work, the anatomy trains work, they're like, well, it looks like the anatomy of the Chinese meridians. And because it is. And so not only does electricity travel through the meridians, it travels through the entire fascial system, right? And so fascia, according to James Osmond, and I definitely agree with this, is a continuous liquid crystal structure. And so you get information transference at the speed of light, and that happens through the fascial system. If you have easy water completely encapsulating the fascial system inside and out, it's just going to work better, right? And you're going to have information like this, and your body's going to recognize what's going on throughout it, and it's going to feel safe because those signals are going to be, they're not going to be, your body's going to feel safe when the fascia is encapsulated with easy water because the signaling system is going to be continuous and uninterrupted. Now, here's a fellow, Albert Szent-Györgyi. This guy was a genius. 1937, won the Nobel Prize. He was the pioneer of vitamin C. He figured out vitamin C. Now, vitamin C is the glue that glues your collagen together. Vitamin C is very important for collagen, and I've got coming up a talk only on vitamin C. It really deserves a special talk, right? It's a very important molecule. And so he theorized that the fascial system is an energy continua in 1937, meaning the fascial system shares subatomic particles such as electrons. He suggested that with adequate hydration, the cytoskeleton of each cell would behave like a semiconductor, and it does, enabling high-speed communication across the collagenous protein network, meaning your entire fascial system can instantly communicate with each other, and the cells are the semiconductor. They will be the source of information, say. Okay? This is a working experience. This is a working theory that explains the arena by which transfer of energy occurs. And I very much believe in this. Okay, so the life cycle of collagen. Now, the collagen is the proteins that your fascia is made of. Now, collagen has a life cycle of 300 to 500 days. Now, let's call that a year, right? Let's call that 1 year. Now, what does that mean, half-life? So say this is the entire complement of 100% of your collagen. In 1 year, 50%, half of that has fallen apart and has been remodeled and remade. All right. And then the next year, this is 2 years in, 50% of this has been broken down and remade. And then in the third year, 50% of that is broken down. And in 7 years, you keep doing this, 7 years, you've got a brand new fascial system, right? So every year, they're continuously remodeling, right? And the fibroblasts are the cells that travel around, and they're traveling around just laying down collagen all the time. But how do they lay down collagen? They lay down collagen according to lines of force. So it's the polarity of your electromagnetic field that the collagen follows. And so if I have a scar right here and I've been cut, now there's no motion on that. There's no electromagnetic field on that because there's no motion. Remember, it's piezoelectric, creates electrical impulse. If there's an electron moving, there's a magnetic field. And these fibroblasts are following the magnetic field, right? But there is none on a scar. And so what happens is you get cross-fibering, right? You get this kind of cross-fibering motion here. And that's your scar. Now, on the edge of the scar, so that's your original scar. Now, on the edge of the scar here, there's limited motion. And so what happens is there's limited motion here. And so the set of the fibroblasts that are doing their normal laying down in the direction of, say, they're making my bicep and I'm giving it lines of force through my movement, they know which direction to go. On a scar, they don't. And so what happens is they cross fiber on the perimeters of this. And so I've got limited motion on that. And then in another year, they'll cross fiber where there's limited motion. And what happens is a scar can migrate because there's limited motion. It'll migrate here. And we see C-section scars migrate into the hips of women all the time. And so the scar work has to take an account of its migration paths and work deeper. We're not just working where they were cut. And so the older the scar, the more problematic. 80% of our back pain patients in women is related to a scar. And so the C-section is the big one. So about 10 years in, somewhere around 10 years, back pain starts. And you have to address the scar. Okay. And so here's factors that are controlled. There's factors that are controlled by the practitioners. So we could put in the degree of load. You can press hard or not hard. How big of a surface area do you use? Rates, the velocity of your vibration. How long do you spend doing treatments? How much load do you use? Creep? Do you not use creep? Do you use muscle energy technique? And the collagen configuration in respect to the direction of force. So are you pressing along the muscle or crossing the muscle? If you want to lengthen a muscle, go across it. If it's short, go. If you want to lengthen a muscle, you go along the muscle. If you want to lengthen the fascial system, you go along the fascial system. If the fascial system's short, if the fascial system that you're working on is short, I'm not going to say that. Just skip that. Here's some things that you can't control, and that's how hydrated is the person you're working on. You can do the skin Tuger test. Basically, you pinch the skin on the hand, and like how long does it take for it to return? If it just stays pinched up, they need some water. And then how old they are, and their health status. And as you could probably see if you figured this out, people who move regularly are going to have better easy water. They're going to be better. People who move regularly, they're going to have more easy water. They're going to be more glide in their body. Their lymphatic system is going to be less septic, and their nerves are not going to be signaling the brain to guard them, right? And so I want to do two things. I'm going to show you tensegrity, and so let's talk about Buckminster Fuller's tensegrity. Okay, this is Buckminster Fuller, and he came up with tensegrity. And let me share my screen a different way. Okay, so tensegrity this is an example of tensegrity. So this is a tensegrity model. You've got struts and you've got wires, right? Turn around. This thing's been through the clinic for about 10 years. And so as this is the pelvis, you've got the sacrum and the legs, right? And the wires are your soft tissue and the struts are your bones. And when you walk, there's an articulation where the bones don't touch. That's your joint, and you want your joints centered, and nothing touches each other throughout the whole body. And so you want the joints to be centered, and no bone touches a bone within the body. If bone touches bone, it auto fuses. And so if they say your knee is bone on bone, it's not, because if you can move that joint, it's not bone on bone, because bones auto fuse when they touch. And so this is your pelvis. Now, if we're looking at the pelvis in a way of tensegrity, if I tighten one muscle, I'm going to tighten the hamstring muscle. If I tighten that, and you can see what happens, these move down, these moves up, it's all crooked. And the tight muscle is here. So one muscle affects the tensegrity, the shape of the entire pelvis. Now, your job as a practitioner is to decide what is affecting the tensegrity. In this case, it's the hamstring. And so if I loosen the hamstring, well, before I say that, your job as a practitioner is decide what is the system, where's the flaw in the system, and where is it tight. And so this patient could come and go, you see how this one's dropping down here. So you see this, no. Okay, so you see how this is pinching down, and so they may have pain at this point. So the pain location has nothing to do with the problem location. It's a clue, But that if you're working on this location, you're on the wrong spot. You're 100% on the wrong spot. You need to source out what is causing that, and you're going to use this tensegrity to find out. And so in this case, it's this tight hamstring. And so if you can loosen the hamstring and then kind of wiggle the bones around, then you can get something that's more straight. Now, we need to take this a step further. Now, that's very broad, a broad look at the body. Now, if we get more and more specific and we're like this, we need to start asking questions: is why is this hamstring tight? Safety, security, stability. One of those things are missing for this hamstring. So either there's a nerve impacted here where the nerve is like, I need to be the nerve is telling the brain, I need a guard. So that tight muscle is guarding something. Or there's a stability issue up top, or there's a nerve vein or artery stuck in the hip. It could be a scar. There could be a scar, a C-section scar on this person, and it's grabbing a sacral nerve, causing this rotation. And so the brain is telling that muscle to be tight. Okay, so that's tensegrity. Now, hopefully you watch Jean-Claude Gimberto strolling under the skin. Now, this is why this is important. This is a tendon, right? So he did tendons in the hand. It works like this. Like this is a telescoping pointer. It's also like the antenna out of your car, right? Remember the old days when you have to do that? And so it enters itself, right? And as a tendon elongates, it doesn't get long like a rubber band. It gets long like this. And so if I want to get elongation out of the tendon, now these are long tendons, but you can assume all the tendons work like this. The Achilles probably does for sure. If I want to get elongation out of that tendon, what do I got to do? I got to get the brain involved and get some movement going, because just pushing on that isn't going to get it. If I stretch this, it's not going to get it. I need them to move, get the brain involved to get that elongation from the inside out, right? And so that's how tendons work right there. All right. And so from here, what we do is we go do the maintenance treatment, the full body treatment, and then we start applying these laws, and hopefully this will all make sense. And as you get more into the work, rewatch these videos. So you have to watch Jean-Claude Gimberto, and you have to watch Gerald Pollack, Fourth Phase of Water. So watch those two as homework, and that should set you up pretty good to understand what's going on with the body as you work through this maintenance treatment that we're going to give you. So hopefully this is useful. We're going to give you a book. It's about a 20-page, 48 technique manual to get through the whole body. It's a whole body treatment, 48 techniques, and you get through the entire body. And what that's going to do is, after you've done several of those, it's going to get you into every joint on the patient. And so once you felt 1,000 hips, you're going to pick up a leg and just go, oh, I know what's wrong with that, right? Especially as you do more and more specific work. Say you know how to release the iliac artery on the hip, which is a big problem on hips. Say you release that and you're like, okay, now I know what that feels like if I release that artery. And I release, so that's femoral nerve. Now you release the femoral nerve and the hip got a new feel. And eventually, after a couple thousand, you can just grab a hip and just move it. Now I know exactly what's wrong with that hip, right? And you can get more and more specific. But you've got to start by feeling a lot of hips, feeling a lot of shoulders. Rock some spines, feel the spine, this rib. So I know if that rib is that nerve coming out of the vertebrae, or is that liver. So as you work and you start making corrections, and maybe you're doing too much work, was probably the case, right? You're overworking. So, but you could have got it. Maybe it took you an hour and a half to get the guy's ribs free, and you could have did it in 10 minutes if you were very specific, right? But you're not going to be able to get specific unless you start broad, because you've got to get your palpation up. You got to be able to feel the rib, and you're like, okay, what is this? What's causing this? Then you try several things, and then you hit the one that works. And as you hit the one that works, you feel it, and it gives you a different feel. And each one of those feels are talking to you. And so the only way to get to the fancy in-game, very specific work is going large to get the feel, because it's all in your hands. And so you've got to have proper palpation, and that comes through just practice. It's like you're playing an instrument. You'll never be good at the guitar unless you practice, practice, practice. Like that is the secret to being good at the guitar. It's practice, right? And it's the same with manual therapy. You've got to practice and practice and practice. And so we're going to give you a manual, lay that thing down and just do it step by step and do it 1,000 times. You're going to be full. Your patients are going to like it. You're going to fix 80% of everybody. And then we're going to get more and more and more specific as we go. Okay, so hope this is helpful. We'll see you in class.